Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. What I like to pride myself in being able to do is not just going with what's comfortable, right? And what I'm going to say is not a question that's going to go over well for most Browns fans, because most Browns fans are in the middle of, building up the hate wagon for this specific player. But the question I'm going to ask is, are we being maybe a tad bit unfair to Dillon Gabriel? Not to say that Dillon Gabriel deserves praise, not even to say that Dillon Gabriel is good. I think Dillon's been pretty bad as a quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Hell, I'm not even really making this video to say that we should play Dillon Gabriel much longer after this game. I think he should probably be benched if he has the predictable results that we think he's going to have in this Baltimore Ravens game. I think there's really no real reason to continue to see him. But the dialogue about Dillon Gabriel and the hate behind it has been something I've noticed where I'm like, that feels a bit outsized. A lot of the frustration has been kind of directed towards Dillon Gabriel because that's the thing that you could switch out and change in this offense. And maybe you want to hold out hope that there's some change that you can make this year that'll make the offense better. But the reality is, you take Dillon Gabriel out, you put another cog in that same machine, and the machine's going to keep doing what it's been doing, which is producing quarterback play. For those of you who don't know, Dillon Gabriel's stats are in his 6 starts as a Cleveland Brown. So we're not including the 1 touchdown he got in Baltimore when he came in mop-up duty. 6 starts as a Cleveland Brown. 850 yards, 58% completion percentage, 6 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 5.2 air yards per attempt. Now, I tried to make a point on social media earlier this week that a lot of people got mad at. And the point I was trying to make on social media earlier this week is that Dillon Gabriel's stat line, while not being impressive, and while his play not being impressive, is in line with what you would expect to see from a 3rd round rookie. It's not extraordinarily bad. It's not extraordinarily good. You can compare what he's done to a bunch of different quarterbacks in their first 5 starts, and the numbers will look similar. To make this point, I brought up like 7 different quarterbacks. So Drake May, his first 5 starts, 932 yards, 65% completion percentage, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 5.9 adjusted yards per attempt with the 2-3 record. Josh Allen, which it's a little tough because Josh Allen ran a lot in his career early on, 758 yards, 55% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 4.6 adjusted yards per attempt, and a 2-3 record. We often forget how much of a disaster Josh Allen was at throwing the football. Obviously, Drake May, Josh Allen, Baker Mayfield all have better tools than Dillon Gabriel, and in their time demonstrated that they have more potential than Dillon Gabriel. That's why they were 1st round picks. But if we're just looking at the output that these guys have had, Baker Mayfield, 1,000 yards, 55% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 5.8 yards, adjusted yards per attempt, 1-4 record. The point isn't that Dillon Gabriel has similar potential to these guys. Absolutely not even close to the case. The point is that Dillon Gabriel is looking like a rookie quarterback. And this is what a rookie quarterback looks like most of the time, right? Are there going to be some missed opportunities? Absolutely. Are there going to be a lot of dropped interceptions? Absolutely. Baker Mayfield's first 5 games, you go back and watch them, millions of dropped interceptions. People don't remember those dropped interceptions because we didn't harp on them at the time because we liked Baker Mayfield, right? He was a 1st overall pick. We all wanted it to work out. We looked past the dropped interceptions. Same thing happened with Josh Allen, right? Josh Allen threw a bunch of interceptions, had a bunch of dropped interceptions, had a bunch of terrible throws early in his career. Like, go back and watch early Josh Allen. Look how much of a disaster he was throwing the football. People didn't focus on that because there were other things to get excited about. With Josh, Dillon doesn't have other things to get excited about, right? If you compare him to other 3rd round quarterbacks, he's about the same there, right? It's hard to find third round quarterbacks that have gotten 5 consecutive starts to start their career. But Desmond Ritter, 23 yards, 66% completion percentage, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, 6.64 yards per adjusted yards per attempt, 3-2 record. Davis Mills, about 945 yards, 67% completion percentage, 4 touchdowns, 6 interceptions in his first 5 starts with the 4.9 adjusted yards per attempt and an 0-5 record. Mason Rudolph, about 976 yards, 66% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 6.86 adjusted yards per attempt with a 3-2 record. Obviously, he was on the Steelers. Steelers are a better team than like what the Texans were, right? When Davis Mills was taking over as the starter for them after they were basically tanking after the Watson trade. These numbers and how Dillon Gabriel have looked are in line with how a third round rookie looks, right? The reaction has not been the same, right? Like I have seen people call this the worst quarterback play of all time when it comes to Dillon Gabriel, which brings me to my main point. And my main point of this video is the Browns offense has bigger problems than a third round rookie is likely to solve, or a 5th round rookie is likely to solve, or a career backup quarterback is likely to solve, right? Because we've watched this Browns offense since 2024. And let's be honest, every quarterback who started eventually has looked like Dillon Gabriel at some point in their run. Since 2024, every quarterback that started eventually gets to the point to where they look like Dillon Gabriel. And honestly, that might be unfair to Dillon Gabriel because Dillon Gabriel, according to some numbers, is playing better than most quarterbacks have in the Brown system since 2024, which is not good for anybody. So here's what I mean by this. If you look at Deshaun Watson's 7 starts as the quarterback in 2024, he threw for 1,148 yards, 63.4% completion, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 5.15 adjusted yards per attempt with a 1-6 record. Then you get Jameis Winston in here, right? 2,038 yards, 61.6% completion percentage in 7 starts, same as Deshaun Watson, but 12 touchdowns, 12 interceptions, 6.12 adjusted yards per attempt. If you look at the end of Winston's run versus the beginning of Winston's run, you can see those numbers jump down dramatically. Joe Flacco, who's playing well in Cincinnati right now, but when he was in Cleveland at the beginning of the season, 815 yards, 58% completion percentage, 2 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 3.66 adjusted yards per attempt with a 1-3 record. So if you think the offense has looked bad with Dillon Gabriel, consider this. Dillon Gabriel has been an upgrade to Joe Flacco. Now, I know some people are like, oh, Quincy, he would have way more interceptions if the DBs just caught the ball. Did you watch Joe Flacco this year? Did you watch Jameis Winston this year? Did you watch Deshaun Watson in 2024? They would have more interceptions too if DBs could catch the ball. All of these quarterbacks have had dropped interceptions. So this idea that like Dillon Gabriel is even the worst quarterback we've seen all year is just not true. And again, that's not a credit to Dillon Gabriel. That's more of a discredit to Kevin Stefanski, who's been running this offense since 2024. This is the problem. This is why I continue to say, by the way, we can look at DTR's numbers, 440 yards on 51% completion percentage with a 0 touchdowns, 6 interceptions, 1.44 adjusted yards per attempt. I didn't know it could get that low. Like think about it like this. DTR is 5 times less explosive as a playmaker than Dillon Gabriel, and he's almost twice as explosive, Dillon Gabriel, as Joe Flacco was when he was out here. Again, this is not a credit to Dillon Gabriel. This is not to say that Dillon Gabriel looks good. But I am going to make the point that this offense that's existed since 2024 is likely holding back every single quarterback that's played for. I think that's just going to be objectively true here. Like, I think Dylan Gabriel's better than what he's putting out right now. I think Joe Flacco, when he was in Cleveland, was better than what he put out while he was in Cleveland, and that's been proven to be true. And look, when Shedeur gets out there, I expect a similar trend to continue. Maybe Shedeur is an improvement to what Dylan Gabriel is doing. Maybe he's more of the Jameis Winston variety, where it's more volume, more yards, but a lot of turnovers. To go with the increased amount of volume, and maybe that makes us feel a little bit better about the offense. But it's going to be some variety of whatever this is from the Cleveland Browns quarterback room, because this is what it's been since 2024, because the problems are just bigger than what you can solve with third-round picks at quarterback, fifth-round picks at quarterback, and journeyman backup quarterbacks. If the Browns want to solve this problem, they have to invest in the offensive line, they have to invest in some wide receivers, and they have to invest in a real solution at the quarterback position. No more scratch-off tickets. No more, well, let's see if we can get lucky and get a guy who used to start to be good again. They need to invest in a real starter and a real change on offense by putting draft picks and money into the offense that has not gone into the offense because of the Deshaun Watson trade. We're going to talk about this more, but real quick, got to thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code WORSTTAKE. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. Every time that we have gone through this since 2024, the cycle is the same. All the attention goes towards the quarterback, and we convince ourselves that if we just get rid of that quarterback, that's going to fix the problem on offense. And there was a time where I fell into that camp. When it was Deshaun Watson in 2024 at the beginning of this cycle, I thought to myself, well, we just bench Deshaun Watson and it'll get better. And then they put Jameis Winston in, and it got a little better at the beginning. But then it slowly started to dip back into what we know would be the case. But seeing that those were the only two examples I had, I thought to myself, hey, maybe Joe Flacco makes this work. Joe Flacco comes in here, and it looks worse than it did with Watson at the beginning of 2024. Now, Gabriel has stepped in for Flacco, and it looks better than it did with Flacco while Gabriel has been in there. But it's about the same as what it looked like with Deshaun Watson. When Joe Flacco was in this year, Browns fans swore that it was just Joe Flacco, and that's the problem. And, you know, if you get rid of Joe Flacco, because Joe Flacco's so old, he can't run quarterback sneak anymore. Joe Flacco's so old, he can't throw down the field anymore. This is legitimately the stuff that we were hearing when Joe Flacco was the quarterback. Joe Flacco is so unathletic, he can't do play action boot. We need somebody athletic in there like Dylan Gabriel to take over the offense. Now, at the time, I mentioned that, hey, I think the problems are a little bit bigger than just the quarterback position right now. And I think that we're going to see similar issues with Dylan Gabriel with the offense if we switch to Dylan Gabriel. Now, the Browns switched to Dylan Gabriel, much to the fans' delight at the time, and the offense made a little progress. Not enough, not a tangible amount of progress, but slight. You know, we've gone from 3.66 adjusted yards per attempt to 5.2. Still a mediocre number. Anything under 6.5 is terrible. But hey, you know, it's improvement. But the larger problems are still whipping this team's ass. And now we're at the same point with Dylan Gabriel that we were with Joe Flacco. And I think people forget just how vicious they were towards Joe Flacco at the end of this. Again, I argued with people because people were telling me Joe Flacco was too old to run play action, that he was too old to run QB sneak. I've watched Joe Flacco this year on the Bengals successfully run play action, successfully run QB sneaks. It wasn't that Joe Flacco was just so uniquely bad that that's what was holding back the offense. And that's probably a case to a much lesser extent with Dillon Gabriel. Now, is Dillon Gabriel going to go to the Cincinnati Bengals and throw for 2,000 yards in 4 weeks? Absolutely not. But could Dillon Gabriel in a better offense look better than he is right now? Absolutely. The Browns offense is going to hold back whoever it is at the quarterback position. The question is, how much is it holding back whoever it is at the quarterback position? And think about the ride we've been on for the last 2 years. When it was Watson, we told ourselves Winston's going to make it better, right? And then Winston goes in and it doesn't get better to the point to where it makes any difference. And then we go in the offseason and we tell ourselves Flacco's going to be better than Watson was last year. And Flacco goes out there and in this offense, he wasn't better than Watson. And then now, we convince ourselves that Gabriel's going to fix the problem. And then Gabriel goes in there and he's a little better, but he's not even close to fixing the problem here. And now we're going to do the same thing with Shedeur Sanders. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, right? Like, how many times do we have to go down this cycle till we recognize that people aren't making excuses for the current quarterback when they point this out, that people are just pointing out a trend that's existed for over a year at this point? The Browns' problems are just bigger than a simple change at quarterback. Hell, even me, somebody who wants to draft a quarterback in the top 5, I have to acknowledge that the Browns can't just draft a quarterback in the top 5. If you draft a quarterback in the top 5 next year, but you drop them into this exact offense with this same coaching staff, you're going to have similar results to what we have seen since 2024. Hell, look at how Drake May looked with Alex Van Pelt as the offensive coordinator versus how he's looked since they moved on to Josh McDaniels. There's a difference there, a significant difference there. If you want to move on at quarterback, if you want to get a top 5 pick at quarterback, the Browns have to address the offensive line. They have to address the wide receiver room on top of addressing quarterback. It can all be done in one offseason, and that's the argument that I've been making all year, is that it can be done in one offseason, but it's going to require a lot of investment and a lot of changes. I think it's going to require moving off of Kevin Stefanski, who, for whatever reason, since the start of the 2024 season, has resembled a shell of himself and not the guy who was doing really good stuff in 2023, in 2022, in 2021, and 2020. This isn't the same guy that we have seen be successful with Case Keenum and Jacoby Brissett. And I don't know if that guy is coming back, and I'm not willing to wait an extra year to see if we're just going to pump new life into him, right? I'm willing to move on at this point, and I think the Browns should be willing to move on at this point. But the problems are much bigger than just quarterback. It doesn't mean that you don't address quarterback in the offseason. You absolutely do. But it also means that if you think all you're going to have to do is address quarterback next offseason, like if we're going to fool ourselves into we could run it back with Kevin, we could run it back with this offensive line, we could run it back with these wide receivers and make slight adjustments to some things, and then all we're going to do is just draft Mendoza or draft Ty Simpson and fix all the problems, you're fooling yourself. The Browns' problems are bigger than a simple change at quarterback. They have to make huge changes in the offseason to this offense, because this is what the Browns have been. And think about it like this. As sick as y'all have been about Dillon Gabriel and the numbers he's produced and how the offense has looked while Dillon Gabriel's been out there, we have to be honest. If you look at the quarterbacks since 2024, the only guy I can put above him right now as far as the output is Jameis Winston. Like, Dillon Gabriel is playing at the second highest rate of any quarterback in this offense since 2024. Again, not a credit to Dillon Gabriel. Not to say that, oh, we should try to unlock Dillon. No, I don't care about unlocking. Dillon's a backup. We know he's a backup. And that's the problem. If Dylan Gabriel and the offense looks like how they are now, and that's not some of the worst quarterback play you've seen in the last 2 years, that's a huge problem because it's telling me that we're creating worse problems for quarterbacks. They need to make huge changes in the offseason to this offense. And unless that happens, and I'm talking about levels on top of levels, it can't just be an offensive coordinator change. I'm talking about offensive coordinator. I'm talking about offensive line. I'm talking about wide receiver. And most importantly, I'm talking about quarterback too. All of it has to be different coming into next season because what they have been doing the last 2 years has produced consistently the worst quarterback play we have seen through 4 or 5 different quarterbacks. We could say that Deshaun Watson is the worst quarterback we've seen since 2010. We could say that Jameis Winston. Well, I don't think you can say that about Jameis. I'll give Jameis that. Joe Flacco this year, you could say that's some of the worst quarterback play we've seen since insert date here. Dylan Gabriel, you can make that argument. DTR, you can certainly make the argument with him. And Bailey Zapp, you can even make the argument with him. He wasn't much better. So this is where we're at. The problems are bigger than quarterback. And this is why I'm not focusing a lot of my energy being mad at Dylan Gabriel. Why am I mad at Dylan Gabriel? You know what I mean? If I'm in a house that is condemned and infested with termites, am I going to be upset that there are flies in there? That's what y'all asking me to be. Y'all asking me to be furious at Dylan Gabriel. This house is condemned. There are holes all over this house. This house needs to be torn down completely. I'm not about to trip over a couple of flies. Obviously, you don't want flies in your house, but there are bigger problems going on right now than what people are focusing their anger on. And that's my main point here. Dylan, he looks like he's going to be a backup in the league at best. And that's what he is. And you should probably move on from that and see what you have in Shador is sooner than later. And when I say sooner, after this week, after the Baltimore game, I'm fine with that. But acting like this season has been a disaster just because Dylan Gabriel is playing is ludicrous because these problems existed before Dylan Gabriel and they're probably going to exist after Dylan Gabriel. And that's because the problems are bigger than Dylan Gabriel. They're bigger than Joe Flacco. They're bigger than Jameis Winston. They were bigger than Deshaun Watson. And they're probably going to be, they were bigger than DTR. They're bigger than Bailey Zapp. And they're probably going to be bigger for the next guy who walks into this specific offense who tries to succeed. That's my point. I hope you understand it. I hope you appreciate it. But y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.